Welcome to Sports Buds Hockey Podcast, where two friends come together to discuss all things hockey and where everyone's opinion is appreciated. Please welcome your hosts, Merrick Zemp and Collin Simpson.
Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 15 of Sports Buds Hockey Podcast. My name is Merrick Zemp, and with me, as always, my buddy Collin Simpson. How you doing tonight, Simps?
Doing good, Mab. Doing good. Looking forward to the finale.
That's right. We are on the eve of the Four Nations Cup final. Canada-US. Big rematch. All sorts of grudge match type atmosphere in here tonight. And I think the only one going to be missing from the lineup is going to be Yogi Oglethorpe. So we'll see what happens with that. Could be some changes. Could be some new things coming. A lot of injury news, a lot of things like that. So we'll try to update you on everything we can and just give you a little bit of heads up what we think is going to happen and really how these changes might affect it compared to the first one. So why don't you start off, Sims? Tell me something. What's Canada got to do right this time to make sure and win the game instead of losing?
I definitely think, obviously, you want to be up for that game. You're in your home building. The excitement of playing the Americans, and both teams really want to be it. Now, obviously, coming right out of the gate in the last game, both teams' emotions poured over pretty quick. Whether it's from the hockey talk or through the years of closer or the political stuff going on, everything all kind of compiled all at once and boiled over. And we started the game out with 3 fights, obviously, and you don't really see a game. Once in a while, you see a game start with a fight. Maybe a second one comes in. But
If they go at the same time, like it's not just somebody else finds a dance partner right off the bat and then a couple fights break out. Not usually 2 seconds later and then a third one another 4 seconds
and I've seen
later.
a couple times where it was another line, so it didn't look bad that the coaches put them all out at once. So 2 people go, so it might be the next line change and those next 2 guys who've been chirping each other from the bench go, and then it's done, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there was all this talk about it being organic and stuff like that, and which turned out to not be true. Obviously, the Tkachuk boys and JT had planned out exactly what they were going to do and how they want to start the game, which is fine. That's part of the game, right? You're thinking to yourself, how do I get my team fired up early on? Like, what's the difference maker? Like you're saying, like, what do we got to do difference? Well, what's the difference maker? You're looking for those type of things. And I think for Canada going into the final, I think they need to keep their emotions in check a little. I think the Americans do better with the bravado they bring and the emotions, and I think they feed into that way better than our Canadian side. I think when you're looking at guys like Nate McKinnon and Sidney Crosby, and they get motivated from within versus maybe external factors. I don't think all that stuff gets them that wired up. So I think
a big hit.
Even McDavid is a quiet, demeanored guy. I think they just need to stick to their game plan and use their skill.
Yeah, the physicality isn't their forte, which I think a lot of the Americans bring that physicality to it. And I think that it really worked for them for some of that. Obviously, in that game, McDavid scored first, kind of came back, but the Americans just kind of kept coming and building on it. More physicality, more hits, more checking, more, sticks in front of the net, more all of that, and really closing down the game. And by doing that, with that physicality, that was kind of started with those fights. It started with that part of the game, and that's, that was their thing. I don't think that'll be a repeat, and there's definitely been a lot of talk. So, I mean, even moving past that, are we even going to see some of those guys? We've got Matthew Tkachuk sat out the Monday game. Brady Tkachuk got hurt and left the game early in the Monday game against Sweden. Are we even going to see those guys? And obviously, a big part of their back end was McAvoy. And he's also injured and even not coming back for the Bruins right away, it doesn't sound like. So he's definitely missing it. The Tkachuks, what do you think? Are they going to make it? Are they going to not? There's all kinds of talk. They're bringing people in for emergency replacements. So, who knows what that ends up looking like for them.
Yeah, I think I feel like both those two will be in. The rumor has it, like, it was a bit of a maintenance type of injury where it's not like, okay, you couldn't play. If that was the last game, I think they play. Obviously Brady did play, and then when he went out, I think they also pulled him and didn't put him back in just due to the fact on why would you. I think both will be in the lineup. Obviously, like you said, McAvoy is a for sure out. That kind of brings us up to one of the next news points was you saw everywhere about the talk about Quinn Hughes coming in, right? And then there was a lot of controversy on different social media and stuff like that, and a lot of controversy I didn't really believe in. Like a lot of Canada side saying, it's not fair that he comes in and out of nowhere, their best defenseman shows up and he has not played one game of the tournament. And I get some of that, the validity of the fact that maybe shouldn't be able to just show up for the final if you didn't really take part in the tournament. However, I don't agree with the fact, like, I know we brought in Harley and it's down to they still needed to lose another defenseman in order for him to even practice or play. But in my opinion, I feel like he had as much right to be there than Harley for us or Sanheim for us, because he was probably, if I was to take a guess, he was the second pick, I bet, for the US. I bet number one, Austin Matthews, number two was Quinn Hughes. So
I could see that being even in reverse.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I feel like he did deserve it because it was an injury that kept him out. It's not like he didn't want to be there. So I think he absolutely should have been able to play. And obviously he would have been able to if he passed his medical, which apparently today he did not pass his medical. So he's not coming even down to the tournament. So I think that just turned into a big talking point of back and forth and just added more animosity to the game.
Well, when you talk about back and forth, we'll get back to Hughes in a minute, but when you talk about back and forth, there's a ton going on between Hagel and Kachuk. They obviously were the first fight. It's been nothing but chirps online in interviews. I think they're doing it on X, on whatever. They're just going back and forth at each other, talking about their fight and what happened. I don't think Hagel's much of a fighter, so the fact that he held his own with Kachuk was a pretty big deal for him and obviously for Canada. They were both wearing their hearts on their sleeves and really proud of their jerseys that night.
Yeah, and that's part of the difference between these two teams we were kind of talking about earlier. We're talking about the physicality, and this is kind of the big thing. Like, Hagel is our guy who's kind of bringing the emotion away from the ice and stuff like that, and kind of a bit of the antagonist a bit here, whereas like their high skill players are doing it. So it's not going to be like our high skill players are never going to get involved in this type of stuff.
No.
And I know they think they're drumming up a lot for the game and putting excitement to the game, and I believe they are. I just feel like in the landscape that we are right now with our two countries, I think it's actually really negative. In the sense of I don't think it's going to. So yeah, you drum up maybe a few viewers for a hockey game, but you put our two countries in a little bit of war spot. So good and bad, I guess, from all this back and forth, and maybe it's going to get taken too far. But obviously, what we really want to see is just two great nations play amazing hockey for one last game and see a winner come out of this.
Yeah. No, and you're right. I mean, sometimes it can go a little bit too far, but I think it's this kind of stuff. You still see it as an attention grabber. I mean, in the U.S., hockey is still not big enough to overlook things like this, where they are getting that attention, where they are grabbing those headlines. I mean, say what you like about fighting and hockey and everything else, but I bet you there was more headlines and more highlights for those three fights at the start of that game in the U.S. than there have been in probably the last 5 years for hockey. So, and I mean, usually I bet you it's more somebody with a big injury or a big suspension or things like that get more of the headlines than anything else. So, being able to draw that out and maybe bring some more people in. I mean, I would love for all of those salary cap numbers and all that. I mean, that stuff doesn't come from us. That doesn't come from a small town of Saskatchewan. That comes from the big cities in the US. When they start watching those games and they start pumping those numbers up, that's when they'll get more money and do that. Now, that just means that the salary cap goes up and then, none of us can afford to go to games anymore. But, still, if they can get more out of the TV money, then maybe the rest of us can still go to games.
Yeah, true. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's ever happened. I don't care what TV contracts they've signed. It has not dropped prices to get to a game.
Yeah.
Especially a game like this. Try to get to this game would be
Oh,
a
I can only
crazy amount of
imagine what
money,
it
I
is.
bet. Is this one in Boston as well? I actually forgot to
It
check.
is in
It is.
Boston. Yeah. Yeah. The first couple were in Montreal, and then now
Yeah,
the rest are all in Boston. So
that's what I thought.
they did bring, I know the US team, they still brought a couple guys in or into the town anyway to see before tomorrow. Brett Pesce and Tage Thompson, I believe. Just kind of having them around in case they can't play, they can't practice. For like you said with Hughes, maybe he was going to be there, maybe he wasn't. I kind of think maybe you just expand the rosters or let it be picked a little bit closer. Having to pick it in the end or the start of December, you got almost 2.5 months, 2 months and a week or whatever it was before they actually played games. I mean, you're dealing with possible injuries, possible returns, all that kind of stuff. Why not just expand it and say you got 8 guys, but you can only dress 6 defensemen? You got 16 forwards, you can only dress, or 18 forwards, you can only dress 15. Like, whatever. Let a few more guys come out. Let them do the Black Aces thing. Let Connor Bedard, let him show up and just be around the group and practice with the team and do that stuff, knowing that unless it makes sense, they're not going to have him there. They're not going to do it. But he can be a part of the whole process and help build the game, right? It's another good interview. It's another whatever. Guys just being around it and doing it. So I would almost like to see that kind of be expanded a little, just so that, yeah, you know what? Quinn Hughes is coming back from injury. It's not a big issue. He can still be there. He can still do this, be an ambassador for the game, perhaps. What if it was Crosby? He has to be replaced, but you don't want Crosby there to be interviewed still? You don't want him in the dressing room? Darn right you do. Like, even if he can't play, you want him as part of this. And so I think that there's a value in having those guys there. So I would like to see it kind of expanded a little more and because they're going to do this. It's Olympics next year, World Cup in a couple of years. Like, for that World Cup, like, let's, if they can, bring it out a little bit more and let them have a couple extras there. So you're not trying to fly somebody across the country if you got a couple injuries or an injury or a flu goes through the team. You can just play a couple other guys and it'll work. Like,
Yeah, it's finding the balance. I agree. Just probably adding at least one on each side to the slot there, since you're going to allow players in anyways. It's an NHL run event, so it's not like it's an IOC type thing. But I do get the point of where you also don't want to open it up too much and be like, well, these two guys aren't playing well, so I'm just going to grab two completely fresh guys. They haven't had a rough game, or these guys got banged up a little, but they can still play. And normally you would get to play against it because, you're laying the body on them. There's a strategy to tournaments sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
There's a long game to wearing a team down, making them work harder, putting the hits on them so when you meet up again later on in the tournament, they're banged up. If you just have the ability to swap out 5 new All-Stars, so I understand that's usually why they try to stop that type of thing. Just like in soccer, where you allowed only so many subs, you don't just allow just a sub the whole way. The whole point is to tire out the other players.
Yeah.
So if you can just keep subbing, that part of the game is completely gone. But I just think since you are allowing people to do it anyways, then take away the controversy by saying, well, we already picked these guys. There's no surprises. We didn't sneak one over on you. We had these guys in reserve. Those are my reserves to choose from.
Yeah, I can play whoever I want out of these guys.
Yeah. So I think I agree with that.
I mean, the hard part with that is that sort of mentality does, in fact, favor Canada, US, compared to when you look at Finland.
Death teams, yeah.
Yeah, Finland had 11 NHL defensemen. 3 were injured, 7 showed up, and one guy whose name I will not look up because I don't want to know who it is. One guy that is a Finnish defenseman that didn't get a chance. He's the only one from Finland that didn't get a chance to go to this. So, what are you going to do with them? I mean, they can't bring 15 guys even if they wanted to.
Correct.
So,
and that's my point, is if you swap some in and out, the depth gets even worse and harder for these teams.
Yeah. But even for Canada, I mean, in reality, there isn't anybody that would have switched Makar for Harley just because, give Makar the night off and go from there. So, you're not going to do that. You're not going to trade those guys out if you don't have to or whatever.
No, but I made a joke about the fact that when I saw Quinn Hughes was coming down and everybody's like, well, these can't play till they get another injury. And I'm going, you're not telling me Jake Sanderson doesn't have the sniffles Wednesday night?
Oh, he tweaked his knee in practice.
Like, how do you really judge that, right? So it's like that was going to happen for sure if he passed his medical. There's no way Sanderson was playing, and Quinn Hughes is going to fly all the way down. Your best defenseman is going to fly all the way down and just sit there and not come in while Jake Sanderson plays.
Yeah,
come on. So that's where I see the problem and how they have to address.
But again, by having that guy, by just having him on the roster and he can play if he's ready, you're good. So,
but I also think you should then also have a ruling of you must have at least played one game in the round robin to make the final.
Yeah, no, and that's where you start to get to those rules. You start to find something else to play in the
Yeah.
playoffs because it may not be a single game final, right? For the World Cup, you're probably looking at a top four making it in a semifinal, then a final, or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could say you have to play a round robin to get into those. You can't just be fresh guys. You can't
Yeah.
rest your guys for this, or and I mean, because that starts to water it down. Oh well, we've got a different team that's maybe a little bit weaker, so you just sit McDavid for that game. Well, I flew across the country to watch McDavid in this tournament play in this
Correct.
game.
It's a showcase,
And
right?
you sit him down so that somebody else can play for that game because you should win or you've already coasted, right? Like they could have sat
Yeah.
half the guys, which the U.S. sat a few guys.
Yep.
Anybody that paid for U.S. and Sweden flew across the country, did whatever to get there to pay for U.S. and Sweden and watch Matthews not play and Kachuk not play. And it's just a tough situation.
Yeah.
But you get it. They're playing. They're already into the finals. You kind of get it, but it's still a tough one to showcase those guys and not have that happen.
Yeah. So come the final, like I said, I'd have been more than happy to see Quinn Hughes play.
Yep.
It is the whole concept is a best on best, not the best that could show up. So that would have been fine. The game's gonna be exciting no matter what. Obviously, if they can kind of keep their emotions in check, the lines that they rolled out, I believe, against Finland were a bit better than the lines I feel like they rolled out against the US and against Sweden. So I feel like they made some adjustments that were pretty good. Obviously, we're always
What are the
still
keys,
gonna,
though? Really, what are your keys?
Binnington has to just be better than he's been. Doesn't have to be a Hellebuck, right? I'm not saying he has to outduel Hellebuck. I'm just saying he has to make the saves that he needs to save. And I don't mind if he gives up one of these ones where he's made a miraculous save later in the game. I'd rather that one went in because that's not disheartening. A goal that you couldn't save doesn't phase players at all. They just turn around and go to the center ice and go, wow, that was a great play.
Well, it's defensive coverage. We should have had him, or whatever happened, or
You don't lose confidence in the guy behind you. I think going into this game, it's been talked about enough, and players are not dumb. They can say what they want in the public eye. They definitely have some doubt in their goaltending compared to if I'm one of the guys and playing in front of Hellebuck. I'm not thinking twice about that. So key to the game is I think he just has to be, let's even just say get a 9-10 save percentage. He can't seem to get over 9. So a 9-10, which is not the 940, 950 great goaltenders have, a 9-10 I think would be key.
He's given up 3 goals, 2 goals, 3 goals.
I think keeping Doughty off the ice as much as possible sounds mean, but I think if he's getting too much ice time and you're trying to match him up against some of the top lines of the US so they keep going out, because that was part of the problem we had against the US is they're so deep that we were putting Hagel and those guys out like a checking line. But it just meant like Hagel and them were just playing all the time. Our top guys were sitting too long and not getting into the flow because we're trying to line match so badly. And I don't know if that always works when you've got so many superstars sitting on the bench. It works in the NHL because you have one line of superstars and they'll get back out, let's say, the next shift.
Oh, okay. You're used to Calgary. So Edmonton actually has 2 lines of superstars. And
Yeah.
a lot of other teams have kind of been working on that too.
Just one line still. 2 guys.
I'm just saying. It's a couple lines of superstars.
Entire rest of the team horrible. 2 guys. Okay.
And then do you just say a superstar? And I mean, who would you even say is Calgary's superstar? I don't even know who that would be. Anyway.
It's the owner who's somehow taking in our money for that product.
Fair
That's
enough.
the superstar.
See, it's like wrestling back in the day. They were all just stars until one became a superstar. Now they're all superstars. I don't know.
But you know what I mean? So this means, let's say it's a 2-minute shift. So if my stars come out for 2 minutes, then they match up. Okay, I got to go with Hagel on them. Okay, so they go 2 minutes. Now there's another set of guys that have to go back out before you can put those first set of stars again, because now McDavid and them are like, okay, now you go. Now you're looking at 4.5 minutes before that other guys even were on the ice again. That makes it difficult in this line matching versus sometimes going, you know what? Crosby and them went out. McDavid and them are going. Guess what? McKinnon and that, you're coming back again. I don't care who they put on the ice.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Outskill them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This time, I'm not saying every time. I'm just saying once in a while,
Well,
outskill them.
Time on the ice was, in the 18, 19-minute range for McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, those kind of guys against the U.S. It was almost 15 across the board for everybody in Finland, right, with the Finland game. So part of that, I think, was some good bonuses with Marchand, Bennett, and Konechny. Those guys were banging everywhere. They were getting chances. I think the whole crowd was excited to hope maybe, just maybe, see Marchand put something in the net, at least get a good play. He was finishing some checks. He was fired up. They started that line, right? So I'd like to see that. I think those guys, I think McKinnon, I think McDavid's going to be playing probably as hard as he's ever played in any game he's ever played. Maybe game 7. So, the same kind of thing. He's going to be putting that in at that point. And I think you might find that a Bennett, Marchand, Hagel, and I know for us, you and me, we've talked about it for I don't even know how many years now, Simps, but the Ed Ward effect. We've bagged on a few guys, and I can really see, we bagged on Reinhart quite a bit, and he pumped out 3 assists against Finland. Maybe it's time for Cirelli to kind of kick that Ed Ward effect into there, and we've bagged on him a lot, and now all of a sudden he gets a goal or even 2. But yeah, I think the superstars are going to be superstars, but I think it could come down to being the game winner could be that 4th liner, could be that 3rd liner, could be whatever, somebody maybe a little more unexpected. I mean, even the first game when Marner did it, right, was kind of already seemingly not really fitting in, not really doing that well in the game, and he just ripped a shot and scored what they needed. So,
yeah, and then the other key to the game is obviously not a big surprise, obviously, but it's special teams. And that's because both teams have big lines they could put out there. The chances of them scoring are pretty obvious that someone's going to put something in with that much talent out there. And I think it becomes even more important because of all the emotions, right? So when the emotions get going and you're trying to throw the big hits and you're trying to do, get right into people's faces and after the whistle and all these little things like that after the 3rd fight, okay, right? JT Miller's fight with Parayko, right? The ref pulled one American guy out and put him in the box.
Yeah.
And they did that to stop it, right? They're
well,
like,
and it was
I
an
don't want
instigator.
fight 4. And
he
exactly.
dropped the gloves and stood
there. But if
there.
that was the first fight, they don't call the instigator. I guarantee it.
No.
It's because it was 3 fights in a row going, is this going to stop?
Yeah.
If it's not, we're going to show you how to stop. We want to see some hockey. Yeah. So I worry that if you get into this stuff with the emotions, the refs are going to just pull a guy out. And rightfully so. They might pull one of ours one time and one of theirs. But if you're the first ones pulled out and you score on your power play, it changes the momentum of the game. You're now chasing the game. You can't just keep chasing and hope that you get your power play some point and score on it. So that's where I think the power play is the more important thing, not just a matter of like, isn't it always important? But because the stakes are going to be so high, the emotions are going to be running so high, I think the likelihood of taking a bad penalty and being punished for it in a game that's going to be tight is going to matter even more.
And I don't think it's just going to be scrums when it comes to that stuff. I think it's going to be having somebody beat you wide and just having to put that extra little push, that extra little cross check, that extra little something to try to keep them outside still. Maybe buying your partner a little bit more time, putting a stick in somebody's legs just a little bit to try to slow them up a little bit. They go down. It's going to be a fine line between winning and losing. So they're gonna feel it, and if they feel it, then yeah, that's when you're gonna start tightening up a little bit, and that's where you might see some of those. And you're right, the power play for Canada, they've been 0 for 1 in 2 games, and then 1 for 1 obviously against Sweden in 12 seconds. So not a lot of power play time, 4 minutes in 3 games for them. The US has had a few more, but I think they're either 1 for 4 or 2 for 4. So yeah, I mean that's really your battle right there. If you can't close that out and make sure it's good, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, one of the factors of that last game was the shutdown of McDavid in the sense of McAvoy being out. He hit McDavid more times than I've ever seen McDavid hit, and we're talking some big hits. And in that game, I was shocked because in normal hockey in the NHL, if you ever hit McDavid that hard, like you did on the boards there, and pretty much just dumped him, that's a fight. You're getting jumped, and that other person's going to take the 2-minute instigator, and you know what I mean? So that's where I guess I'm worried about with the extra penalties and stuff like that. Now with McAvoy out, that obviously helps, but you know that they saw that fired their team up and may cause Canada to lose their cool and do something stupid and take the power play. So I think that's part of their game plan and why they were trying to hit as much. Obviously, they're a bigger team, but they're a skilled team.
after McAvoy, there isn't as many big hitters, especially on the defense. Like Fox isn't a hitter. Who else do they have? Sanderson's not a hitter. Like there's a bunch of them that aren't really big hitters anyway. So that should kind of reduce that struggle, reduce that kind of element. But yeah, it's definitely something. I think at one point they showed a stat for McAvoy, and he had 4 hits. 2 were on McDavid, and 2 were on Crosby.
Well,
So, and I
and
mean,
and
some
and
didn't
to be
even count
honest,
as hits.
that might be the biggest telling factor of this game is we'll call it defensive substitutions.
Yeah,
McAvoy out, Makar in,
yeah,
right? That's a big swing on the pendulum
yeah,
for what was probably their best defenseman in that other game
yes,
and our best defenseman by far overall on our team coming in. You're
yeah.
losing one of yours and we're getting one of ours. So that might be the big factor that changes this and
Well,
how we can win.
without his pressure, without McAvoy's pressure, now you're starting to look at maybe a little bit more room out there for McKinnon, a little bit more room for McDavid, a little bit easier to get to somewhere, a little bit more. Yeah, and that might be, and then Makar actually ripping passes up there for him. That really may be the case.
But yeah, I don't know. Lots of things that can go either way when you're two teams that are this tight,
Yeah,
play together a lot, play against each other a lot. So it's not like an unknown. They kind of know how to both coaches and GMs and that know how to play each other and they know what they're playing against. So you see lots more systems get put into place. That's why it's despite all this talent, it's not always that easy to score because you know how to neutralize each other as well. So, but I think
not
it'll
even a
make for an
lot of
exciting game.
shots. I read somewhere there was only been one game with 30 shots so far. I don't know if that changed. I think that was before Canada or before U.S. and Sweden. But with a 2-1 score, I would assume that probably didn't drift over 30
Yeah, I
shots
don't
each
think they
either.
did.
So
No, I don't think so.
yeah, so you've had one team actually hit 30 shots in a game. You know they're playing a good solid game, and it's not dump and chase with no plays and no anything. It's hard skating, plays back and forth, but it's good defense when they do it, and it's making every pass difficult and like doing all the right things. You're not beating a guy that was in the AHL this morning. He was in the
Correct.
AHL and they flew him in for
Correct.
an injury relief, and now all of a sudden here comes Makar and McKinnon on a breakaway or on a 2-on-1, and you got a guy that started in Bakersfield this morning, and now he's got pulled up to the big leagues for tonight. So without that, you're not getting any freebies. You're not getting anything easy. So, it's going to be amazing.
Okay, so with all said and done, obviously it's been a great tournament so far. Really loved it. Been able to catch pretty much every game. So we got the big finale tomorrow. What are we thinking in the sense of let's make some predictions? So I'm gonna say we're gonna go pretty big here. We're gonna go who wins, a
Yeah,
score line,
yeah.
top 3 stars.
Oh,
We're going
okay,
big.
okay. All right. Well, we'll start with the easy one. Let's start with who wins and the score. So I'll go first. I'm going to go 4-2 Canada with an
Yeah,
empty netter.
I'm gonna go. I think it's gonna be even tighter. I'm gonna go 4-3 Canada.
4-3 Canada.
Yeah, I don't think they get the empty netter, but I think it'll be 4-3. I think it'll be. I think there won't be many goals early, and I think some will come a bit later. I
Yeah.
think they'll be pretty tight in the beginning, but yeah, I'm gonna go 4-3 Canada.
I think Canada's going to start out ahead, fall behind 2-1, and then come back, tie it, get ahead, and then get the empty netter for 4-2. That's my prediction. Okay, so now we've got that. Now we need some 3 stars. So
Okay, so we're looking at. So I've got 4-3 Canada.
yeah,
I feel like gonna come out of the U.S. for a big game. Who's gonna be game breaking that one? Yeah, I'm can't even go with Kachuk's either one just because you don't even know if they're gonna be there for sure. Uh,
they will. They'll play. They'd play
I
on a
think
broken leg, even if they
yeah.
couldn't take shots or couldn't do something.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go a sneaky one. He was really good in that last game, and I think he's gonna get even more time if one of those guys, even if they play and lose a bit of time. I'm gonna go 3rd star Dylan Larkin.
Ooh,
I think he's
interesting
a
one.
sneaky good player with his speed. He was all over the ice last time.
Yeah,
I think he's gonna be really good. And I'm gonna go number 2, Cale Makar.
yeah.
And I just can't. I love McDavid, but I think there's one
Wow,
guy on
I've
this.
never heard you say that.
there's one guy on this team I think is gonna it might implode him, or he's gonna just shine. It'll be Nathan McKinnon. The guy takes this stuff so seriously. He's gonna be so dialed in and want this more than any person on both teams, I believe. Now, sometimes, as we saw in that one overtime, he can get a little too much of just me, 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 me. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I do worry that that's when I talk about imploding. It's like, could you have a horrible game because you want it so bad?
Yeah, he's
But I
got
think if it
17
goes the other
shots.
direction, I think he's gonna dominate.
So I'm going to go because I did a 4-2 score. I think the two goals are going to be related. And I think there'll be one common element for the U.S. And I think that's going to be Jack Hughes, a guy that hasn't, from what I could tell, I don't think he's done a whole lot, like one assist or something like that so far and whatever. But it just seemed like he was moving and getting around players and really impressed me in the games that I've watched with him in it. And just really somebody that I could see. I don't know that he's going to rip shots by them and do that, but I feel like he could easily be a 2-assist guy and kind of all over the ice. The next one I would go is Crosby. I think he's going to step up and shine, and I think with McKinnon, but it could be a couple assists for Crosby and McKinnon involved as well. And I'm going to go with McDavid. I think other than Game 7 last year, I don't think he's ever played a game this important to him. And realistically, throwing that Canada jersey on, this might even feel more important than Game 7. I don't think it is, and I don't think he thinks it is either. But in this moment, I mean, Game 7's now almost a year ago. So at this point, he's feeling like this could be the biggest game he's ever played. And I think he's going to be absolutely on fire. He hit, I think it was 38 either kilometers an hour or something like that when he scored the other night.
Yeah, kilometers.
And not only that, he hit 38 kilometers an hour and still stick handled and roof to backhand at that amount. I couldn't get going that fast if you drugged me behind a vehicle, and I definitely couldn't be stick handler while I did it.
Well,
So
now they just got to make sure they hit him with those passes like they did there, and not go back to just chipping it out.
Yeah, the flip thing. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so my picks are going to be Hughes and then Crosby and then McDavid. So I think those are going to be your guys. And yeah, I'm hoping big time that I'm right with a nice 4-2 game, and I think it's going to be amazing.
I definitely like your sneaky pick on Hughes. I agree with you. Watching the games, he's not on the stat line, but he just looks so smooth, so buttery with his hands. His passes are all perfect. Eventually, it's going to turn into something. So I really like that one. That's a good pick there. Okay, well, I guess
there we go.
All that's left is to watch the game and see where the cards lie at the end.
Yeah, so the next episode will be we've already talked about this, Simpson and I, we will either be celebrating Canada's win, maybe even tomorrow night right after the game, or we will be decompressing and stewing in our anger and all of that for a day or so before we get back to it. And what we're going to do a nice recap, obviously, of the big game and what happened, but also just the whole tournament and what we thought, some ideas, what's coming up moving forward and going from there. So lots to talk about, and obviously we're not going to be too long. We'll be back into the NHL come Saturday, and that's going to be even more to talk about. We're only a couple weeks from the trade deadline. It's just busy at this point. So next time, we'll do the whole recap, and hopefully it'll be a good news recap. Simps?
Yeah, hopefully. Praying.
So don't forget to follow us. You can always go to www.sportsbuds.com. That's sportsbudz.com. You can also find us Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, you name it. We're kind of all over the place. So make sure you tell your friends. Don't forget to follow us and do all that stuff as well so you don't miss any episodes. We really appreciate it. We love doing this for you guys, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it as well. Don't forget to drop us a line and let us know, and we can all enjoy Simpson's predictions. Hopefully, I even if I'm wrong, if he's right, I'll be happy. So that's a good thing. Just this once. All right, thank you, Simps. Great show tonight, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mav, and go Canada, go!
Absolutely, all the way. 4 Nations champions. Let's do this.